what they say about the rose out the concrete, flowers blooming in dark rooms, proof of when God speaks. What a passion and grind me. Call it perfect timing or alignment. The assignment provide peace. Confirmation through conversation. My knees been blooded, been praying for patience. Embracing these affirmations, we made it. Hard times, but we made it. Been shaking the devil off under pressure, we never faded. We the living proof of the promise, being honest. We cut from a different cloth. Black excellence satisfying us, we the living proof. I don't deserve it, far from perfect. A product of taking chances and leaning on his discernment. We the living proof. Living legends, it's a blessing to be a blessing. Providing the youth for the new perspective. We the living proof. The living proof, y'all.
Alright, so welcome back to another episode of Living Proof. And I am honored to have my brother, Mr. When you run for president?
2040.
Sometime soon, man. My brother, Mr. Avery Martin here, man.
Appreciate you.
Good to see you and all that. We are continuing this series on healing. Healers dealing with unhealed trauma. And I'm ready and really excited. We kind of already had this conversation to jump off on Twitter.
Yeah.
And so we're going to dive in. And first, before we get into my questions, who are you? You know what I'm saying? And what do you do?
Yeah, so number one, thank you, Justus, for having me, dog. Obviously, relationships build over time. And so ours has genuinely done that. And I think for us over Twitter, Justus asked a question about not voting. And I just said, listen, hit my line, right? And so I think that's where, for me, I'm always been approachable and telling people, just hit my line, you got my number, let's discuss it. Going back to the professional realm, I used to be the director for Lawrence County DSS in South Carolina. And so I was the youngest director in the state at that time at 31. And so leaving DSS, I went straight to the political world. And so I've been telling everybody I pretty much jumped from high school to the league and running a presidential campaign for a U.S. Senator. And so I've had the opportunity to do that. And now I'm in transition from South Carolina to D.C. But one of the things that I'm looking forward to doing is building a pipeline of ideas of community over the next 3 to 4 years. And particularly what we do here in South Carolina and how we do that within the African American community, but also the Hispanic community as well. And then looking at making a congressional run possibly in the next few years here. So right now, I'm a free agent, as they say. But again, that's going to change really, really soon now that things are beginning to open back up. But politically, I plan on making some more steps and moving forward to be a candidate really soon.
Most definitely. That's awesome, my brother. So you ready to jump in?
Yeah, let's go.
All right, so my first question, and not even similar to the first question, but who are you and not what you do?
Yeah, so defining who are you is really a poignant question in today's society. I always tell people I'm a listener. And I think that's one of the key things that has allowed me to be successful is being able to listen, but also being able to connect with people. So I'm a connector. Whenever someone has an idea, typically I'm the person that people call because I believe in building relationships, as I said before, but also helping people connect to their goals and their dreams. And so being a listener and a connector then allows me to be effective. And so for me, those are two things that make up and embody who I am as an individual, is being a leader, number one, but being a listener and then a connector to see where people's goals and visions desire to be is so crucial, because I tell everybody we can't do everything.
Most definitely.
But when we help other people fulfill their dreams and their goals, then we become successful.
Most
and
definitely.
I think that is the key for me and how I see building community and the village. And so I hope those things and those attributes connect to people when they hear this story, but also when we have conversations together.
Most definitely. All right, my next question, my brother, this whole series is centered around healing. And your definition, what is a healer, and do you consider yourself a healer?
Ooh, what is a healer? I think a healer is a person, again, who listens, but also who has empathy toward situations. And so being a director for DSS, I've seen families and individuals in broken situations. And so they've come to my office and our agency to ask for help. And so I think for me, healing is number one, acknowledging the pain.
Most definitely.
But then number two, taking the steps to identify those things, but then to work toward fixing them. And so I think that's what healing is. You have to identify that there's a pain and a hurt there.
Most
but
definitely.
then number two, you have to be willing to put in the work to do that. And so for me, in the work I've done, it has allowed me to be a healer. If a family does not have food, we as an agency help that family. If a family needs parenting or whatever assistance it has been, it has been for us to be able to help them. But again, for me personally, when people need help, and if I can help them and they hit my line, it is up to me to say whether or not I can or cannot do it. But oftentimes I've been able to do it. And I think that's the key for me too, is in an age in where everybody wants to put something on social media, you come to me, it's like it's a closed box, because I don't believe that we should put out what we're doing for other individuals for accolades or for help. And so I think also that's so important in the healing process, especially when it comes to men who are struggling with identity and other self issues. They're not looking for a brother to write this long post about why he helped you.
Straight up.
They're looking for you to come in the confines of a locked room and say, bruh, I need help. I need you. Can you help me?
I'm struggling.
But then can we keep it 100 in this help? And so for me, I think that's another crucial part of the healing process. Healing does not lead to social media likes. It does not lead to social media shares. And I'm not saying there's not an opportunity and a time for that, but I'm saying the people that I've dealt with who've been hurting, who have felt like I want to take this gun and just end it,
it's real life.
we're not looking for a like or a story on Facebook or Twitter to say someone helped me. And so that's kind of been my situation. And again, for me working in this work, being a leader in this state, I've seen whether you are rich or poor, you need help in healing. So it goes across the board. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of people don't seem to understand. And again, it's easy for the rich man to say, I am rich, but yet I'm poor at heart, I'm poor at spirit, right? So it's easy for the poor man to say, I'm poor. If I were rich, right? But again, it's hard to say what you would do in those situations if that's not your life and what you're currently going through.
It's tough, man. And what you're saying is so real, man. It's kind of like the essence of hope and being hopeless. And if you've never been hopeless, you probably can't relate. This is polished, Avery. You know what I'm saying? You sound real good. Told you, vote for my brother, man. This is a true politician. But I'm pretty sure you haven't always been as polished, as clean cut. So what obstacles in your life? Well, one, do you think your obstacle gave you purpose? But what were some of the things that kind of led to the Avery we see now?
So I mean, being transparent. I mean, when Justus got engaged, I sent him a message and I said, listen, the things that you did leading up to that, right? Continue to do those things. I said the same thing to Braylon as well, right? So I was married. Many people don't know that. And I ended up getting an annulment. So it was really, really quick, right? But out of that experience, I had to acknowledge failure at 28. So for the first time in my life, I'm looking at my situation like, darn, I failed. I failed college courses before. I've lost basketball games before. Like I've done some things that we lose at in life. But at this one thing that I'm saying, man, God, like I should be really, really good at this, right? I failed. And so for me, it was a humbling experience. And so I had to come back to the fold of family and life to say, I screwed up, right? So again, it wasn't one of those things where I never have said anything negative about the young lady I married, because I never would, because number one, I take responsibility as a man to say, hey, I asked you, right, to walk with me in this journey. But that for me really was the first experience in life at 28 that I had to examine where I was going, because at the time, I'm living on the West Coast. I literally had to text my mom right before Thanksgiving. I'm like, Mom, I got like $5 and some change in my account. I'm like, can you get me a ticket home? And of course, she said, yes, I can get you a ticket home. And so a few months later down the line, we have this family meeting, and I say to my parents, what happened, yada, yada, yada. And my sister I remember my father saying to me, son, we're going to make you 10 times better, right? Like you're going to get back on your feet. But that transition and that part of life really has allowed me to be where I'm at right now.
That's beautiful.
And I think that's the thing when I talk about being a listener and also being a bridge for people. I couldn't have done the work at a high level that I did for DSS as a director without going through my own pain.
Had you not been through, your own struggle, that's real.
And so going through that experience, it just shaped me, man. I mean, it's humbling, number one, because you failed. And so you may not have failed before 1,000 people, but you failed before God in that sense, right? And so you have to go back and say, wow, like what did I do, number one, that I shouldn't have done? But then number two, how do we move forward? And so out of that process, I had to go through the healing process, right? And so I had to acknowledge the hurt, right?
Step one.
Because because I had to be real and say, bro, this isn't what you wanted. You didn't sign up for this, but this is what you have. So how will you move forward after this? And so for me, cheering people on has always been my thing, but I had to get it from a different perspective now.
Yes,
because when you're hurt and you want it to be kind of like this this image of almost perfection at times, and you realize like, John, ain't nothing perfection,
it's
right?
an illusion, man.
And then you go through it, so you like, woo, I'm dirty, I'm unclean, and then you ask yourself, how would somebody else want me, right? And that's as a man speaking, because again,
that's real too.
We supposed to have it together, right? And so you like, everybody's like, oh, you're gonna do this, you're gonna do that. And you like, I got the world at my fingertips, but then it shatters. And so for me, I think that was the thing when you talk about what has shaped me to here. I had to acknowledge failure. And I think that's another part of healing that as men we struggle with, because oftentimes we want to manipulate the situation. We say, well, I'm a good man, I don't cheat, I don't cuss at you, I don't hit you, I don't do these things, right? And so when it happens to us, we're like, well, why did it happen to me? But then ultimately God is saying, no, I'm looking at your heart though. So there are some things in that and saying like, gosh, I had an ego, right? That I don't do these things. But again, that's the bare minimum, right? And so again, God brought me back to 1 Corinthians, man. Love is patient, love is kind, and envy is not boastful. And so again, that had to be the bridge, right? A relationship, but it's in a genuine way.
Man, that's beautiful, man. And going with this whole aspect of healing and going in a little deeper, do you feel like at any time during your life, because we know healing is not pretty, you know what I'm saying? Do you feel like you blocked out anything from your past that you now as a grown man have to deal with and face?
Yeah, so my thing to that is very different. I was actually with my father this past weekend, and he asked me, he said, do you think I spent enough time with you?
Wow.
And so one of the things that I had to say to myself was, and I said to him, like, I've never thought about it. Wow. Because again, unbeknownst to me, my parents have been married 40 years together.
It's a blessing.
So I don't know what other things look like. And I took things for granted, right? And so when you talk about healing, sometimes we take things for granted, not knowing we shouldn't.
That's real.
And so again, I was naive in trying to feel like I'm invincible, right? Because I've got a loving home with parents. My parents have been there when I needed them, for my sister and I. So I don't have these certain traumas. But God was saying, listen, just because that's not your story does not mean that humility should not still be a part of your everyday walk. And so for me, I had to acknowledge being naive
That's real.
to certain situations just because I was comfortable, right? And so we don't, and again, that's why I talked about the rich man versus the poor man. We see the rich man in a big house and we say, oh, he is comfortable because he has a car, he has gas, he has all of these things. And the poor man is like, but I want to obtain them, right? But God is saying, nope, you don't know what the rich man is battling with wanting to take his own life. So he's saying, I want you to be happy with what you have. And so for me, it was kind of that story where I was a prodigal son. And so I was doing what I wanted to do, just running, right? And then God's like, boom, nah, you can't run no more. And so a part of that for me was I had never had to stop in my life for doing anything.
Wow.
Because it was always just go. If you fall, somebody else got you. And so again, looking at my past when I finally had to stop and just say, damn, I had to examine what I could have done differently at 21. What I could have done differently at 24, right? Because there were some decisions that I made inherently that I could have done some things differently. And so I had to acknowledge that.
Most definitely.
And so then I had to say, okay, God, you're going to reshape this, but it's still going to be the story and the line that it's supposed to be. But again, if I would have done some things differently, then maybe I would have went to law school, right? And maybe out of law school, I wouldn't have even got married because I would have been there right now at that time. You see what I'm saying?
Most definitely.
So again, it's some of those things that you have to go back and examine. But again, for me, once I acknowledge the failure and I acknowledge, okay, God, what could I have done differently in relationship in this period of time between 21 and 28? Then he said, okay, I'm going to then help you get to where you're supposed to be. But again, in this season of life, it's no rush. You see what I'm saying? It was a rush in the beginning part because in your 20s, you're running and you're saying, God, I just won't. But you're not stopping to pay attention, as they say, to smell the flowers.
Smell the roses,
right?
Man. Yes, sir.
And so for me, I didn't stop. And so I kept looking at what's next until God finally said, okay, I'm going to show you.
I feel like in a sense you're telling my story right now, especially with this quarantine. And I talked about in the first episode just pretty much how I went through a state of depression because I was so addicted to my routine. And just in a sense, when you're by yourself, how you have to deal with yourself. So that's definitely where I was at. And definitely just, we talk about the power in your story, man, and how you can truly get healing from that whole self-reflection piece. So now, as the Avery we see now, what areas in your life do you feel like you still need healing?
Yeah, man. So one of the things that I always ask for God is just discernment, right? Like this straight up. And so I'm a tough cat. Like people don't realize that. So I ask God all the time, like soften my heart at times, because as men, we're like press the goal, press the mark, right? But sometimes God is saying, I'm not asking you to press anything right now. I just want you to sit and be still. And so for me, that's the constant battle for me. And even as you spoke about before, in these last 90 days, it's been a battle in being comfortable with saying, God, I'm stuck in this position, but he's saying you're not stuck.
You're not stuck.
Right? So I had to free myself of that mindset of feeling stuck. Because I was like, God, I just came off running a presidential campaign. And all of a sudden, the next day, it's like, boom, it just stops.
Man, I can't believe it. You was more hands-on. I remember I worked Ben Carson's campaign, and I was just like one of his state reps or something. But it was constant. So imagine what you was facing on a daily, and then coming to a complete halt. It had to do something mentally.
Man, you know what? It's a politician. I won't say his name, but it's a black brother who he's only 39, only a few years older than me, and his story, it connected to me because he was at the highest level of heights in politics. But when it ended for him, he couldn't figure out what was next. And so publicly we've seen, where things have gone, and, he leaned toward drugs and some other things in his family. And so I prayed that things get connected with him. But I felt so connected to that because you're on this high. And it's like you're at the apex of the roller coaster. It's almost like that Wale, that album he's talking about, you know what I'm saying, with Seinfeld. So you're going up. And so you're at the top. But once you get to the top, you just straddle for a second. And then when you go down, it's really like shoosh. And then you're saying, God, what is next? And I've been feeling like you're not even listening to me, right? And so everybody around you was asking like, well, what's next? And so you go on a few interviews and you're like, nah, this ain't it. And they don't offer you the job anyway, so you know it ain't it, right? But you continue to desire to see what's next. But one of the things that I started doing was giving more, right? So someone would send me an email, God, needs this. So I'll say, God, I'm giving with a whole heart, right? Someone would say, well, I need you to meet with this person. I'm like, who am I right now, right? Like, I ain't nobody, right? But God is like, nah, I'm still gonna use you. And so that's what I did in this season was, I started giving more to begin to heal what I was missing, right? Because again, it's action.
That's it, man.
And so when you're going, you go, but you miss out on so much. And so for me, the beautiful part about all of this has been able to be still, right? And just listen to God. But then accept the time that I have with my family as well too, which is something that in this season of life, I haven't had. Because once you graduate college and you go from job to job, city to city, it's like you don't see mom and dad anymore, right? But then also it has kind of renewed my mindset and some of the business things that I wanted to do. And again, we talk about healing continuously, right? The mind is one of the things, Romans 8:28, that we have to continue to think about, right? Because it's truly a renewing of the mind daily. And I think it's one of the things that I had to look at. And I had to say, God, okay, today is Thursday. What can I do today? Because once you get in the routine, as you know, Monday through Friday, you know in the morning I get up, I got to go to work. I got to do this after work. So sometimes when you want to spend time with God, you're tired already. And so you're saying, well, God, I want to read this book for an hour. Well, I got to do schoolwork, I got to do this. And so God sometimes go lacking. We go to church on Sunday for an hour and a half, but I got to get on Twitter because I'm ready to go. You see what I'm saying? I got to get on Instagram, like some pics. So for me, man, it's really been the healing process of just being home. Just to be able to cook for the family. Just be able to see them.
That's real.
To be able to talk to them. Because again, this next chapter, we go back full speed.
I think you said something so key, man. You said part of your healing was being home.
Yeah.
And I can, like, just thinking about my mother's house, like, sometimes it's like, you ain't trying to go back home, but just how rejuvenating it is to be around family, to be around the ones you love. And when you get in that routine, man, it's easy to miss what God has placed already in front of you. I think another thing, the quarantine helped me realize a lot of things we think we need, you know what I'm saying, we don't.
Right.
And so just taking more of a focus on family. And I think that's a real part of healing, because I really feel like regardless of how you got here and your story, man, God placed people in your life for a reason, especially your family. No matter how much they've been getting on your nerves, you connected to them, you know what I'm saying? So I feel that's a strong place of healing. And my last question to you, man, you kind of talked about it earlier, but how are you using your story right now to navigate through life?
So for me, one of the things that I have 5 young male black cousins, and so I talk to them regularly. And so I help them navigate through the pitfalls. So again, when I talk about being 21 and looking at things differently, I have some cousins that are 21. And so they're going through that same mode right now. And they're trying to figure out, what am I supposed to do? What is my purpose in life? And so for me, not being so far removed from that situation, it's the same thing. You know, your parents try to share some things with you, like, man, y'all are too old and too far removed. So I'm still like the hip cousin, if you will. So I connect with them and how we're going to navigate through college into the next steps. And so for me, that's how I look at life right now and sharing that story. And again, I'm free when people ask me, how did we get here? And one of the things that I tell people too is that fear died when failure happened. Right? I had to acknowledge, again, I was fearful of saying I want to study for the LSAT and go to law school. I was fearful of doing some things. So I kind of played second fiddle, right? When I should have been stepping up saying, God, but you got this.
You got it.
You said you got me. And so I put some things on back burner because of fear. And so some things that I'm saying now is I'm moving forward because I've already seen what God has done. And so now he's saying to me, I got your back. So when I stepped out on faith to go into the political world, again, that was the backstory. Because I had told my family for a few years, I'm going to do this. I didn't know when it was going to come, right? So again, for me, the daily thing is understanding what has God placed in your heart. He's placed some things in business that we talked about earlier. And so I began to work on the business aspect. Again, because I've seen what God, if you've been giving me this since 21, 22, then there's a reason that it's still been on my heart, right? So again, that's the other beautiful thing about this time is that I've been able to work on those things. And so for me, now I'm saying, okay, this is like the songwriter said, this is my story, this is my song, right? So again, now I'm understanding what my praise is, right? But it's still a work in progress, right? And so I think that's the thing too for me now is it's not just a green light that I'm looking for. I look for the yellow lights now of caution.
Hey.
Right? And if God says, stop, right?
Tweet that.
Then I'm stopping. Because see, sometimes, my first car was a stick. And so I would have to straddle up a hill. See, sometimes we want to straddle, right, the situation. And God is saying, no, I want to remove you that from all together. But because we don't trust or we're afraid to trust him, right? It's like, well, God, I want to keep moving. And so finally he said, okay, look, I'm going to let you go have your way. And then when you land in that ditch, then I got to hopefully pull you out. But what if he doesn't? Yeah. And so for me now, that's been an important part of this process because now I'm moving with caution. But if God says go, then I'm what? I'm going. And I think that's how we're navigating through this chapter, even in relationship. There are some people, and I tell you this all the time. When you're around, imagine for the Democratic primary this past year, we had 20 people running for president at one point in time. I'm in a room with every candidate, including Vice President Joe Biden, right? And I'm looking around in this room and understanding why I'm out here. That's the key for me now. God, what's the purpose? Right? Because again, what if the purpose ultimately is not for me to run for office, but for Justus to run? Right? But again, my relationship and my connections now make the walking for Justus a whole lot easier. And I think that's just where I'm at, man. My experiences have said to me, you can help somebody else. When somebody else asks me now about certain things about marriage, I can help them. Listen, bro, I wouldn't marry alone, but this is what I can tell you.
For real, your experience.
And I also can share from the perspective of I've seen my parents walk together for 40 years. So if you want somebody who wants to talk, so listen, my pops is open, right, to discussing. And again, I didn't look at that relationship as being important. Because again, why? I was comfortable with it. Because again, it was my normal. See what I'm saying? Real. So now I look at my normal totally different now. Now I look at my normal is, what am I not seeing that I should be seeing? And now it's allowed me to connect more with people in a different way, on a tighter level than even what I expected. Because now people see you as being what? Vulnerable. Right? Because as men, we want to be Superman.
We want to. We think we're Superman.
Yeah, and we want to be Batman, and we want to, we want to flip the script. But then, it's like, I can't flip it today. Because today I ain't got it.
I ain't got it. And it's being able to be in that position to admit,
I
don't have it.
Yeah, and I'm real with that. Sometimes I'm like, no, I ain't got it today.
And it's perfectly fine, you know what I'm saying, not to have it. But I'm just going on, just like you said, as men. It's just that toxic masculinity when we put in unnecessary burdens on ourselves. But you do definitely hit it on the head, man. You guys got a word today. I don't know what else to say to that, man. How can they follow you? How can they keep up with what you're doing? Yeah, so on Twitter and Instagram, it's Avery Stenard, STENARD Stenard. Obviously on Facebook, Avery Martin, LinkedIn, the same thing as well too. But then if anybody wants to email me, averysmartin@gmail.com. I'm always open to conversation and to moving things forward, and hopefully you'll begin to see things in the community. I'm working with some people right now on a few initiatives to kind of move things along forward too as well. And so that's the key for me now, is community, but legacy. And what are we going to leave behind? What you leave behind, man.
And so that's where I'm at right now, leaving something behind.
Man, my brother, it has been a true blessing, man, to have you to be featured on Living Proof today. All I can say is thank you, man. Just for being vulnerable, being open. Until next time, man. And thank you guys for tuning in. If something resonated with you, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that share button. This has been The Living Proof with your boy Jay Cox, where your story is within your purpose. Thank you. That's it. That's good. It was good, man. It's good. It was good. Oh, it wasn't even recording. You playing? I'm playing.